Hello, the internet, and welcome to Open Source Directions, hosted by Quansight, the webinar that brings you all of the news about the future of your favorite open source projects. My name is Anthony Skopatz, your host for Open Source Directions, and today is a very special episode for me. Today we'll be chatting about Condaforge, which is a project I've been deeply involved in for many years now. But before we get into all of that, hosting with me today, as usual, is the illustrious Carol Willing.
Thank you, Anthony. Hi, listeners. I'm Carol Willing, and I'm an active member of the Jupyter and Python communities. And I'm very happy to have an opportunity to chat about one of my favorite projects, Conda Forge, today with Marius and John.
John, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
John Kirkham. I'm an active member in the Python community, Conda Forge member, and also contribute to Dask, Czar, and Rapids.
And Marius.
And hey, I'm Marius van Niekerk. I've been part of the Condaforge team for sort of a couple of years now, and I'm a maintainer on a number of sort of data-related open source libraries as well. So generally in the Python space, but a little bit of Scala in there as well, because why not?
Why not, indeed. So thanks for joining us, both of you, today. And just to start off, we're going to have our famous Tweet of the Week section, where each of us gets to present a tweet that we've been enjoying recently. So Marius, you are first up.
Yeah, so there was a very, very interesting tweet that made its rounds. It's a tweet of a rubber duck with many other rubber ducks on top of it being driven down a river, saying it's like, this is how modern web development is. But I think it's also applicable to how most modern software is. It's just all piles on top of each other until you actually get to the point where you're running NumPy.
John, what's a tweet you've been enjoying recently?
I like this tweet that CZI did recently about supporting open source software. So they've been requesting a lot of different open source projects who are involved in different things related to biomedical research, get in contact with them and submit proposals for funding.
That's awesome.
Excellent.
And staying on that bio and science theme, my tweet is from the Prakash Lab at Stanford, and they have this cool new paper out, or preprint, about Octopi, which is an open source, configurable, high throughput imaging platform that actually is fairly inexpensive. And it's used to detect malaria. So if you're a scikit image fan, you might want to check it out.
Yeah, fascinating. So pertinent to this episode is a post by Anaconda linking to a blog post by Conda Forge's own Michael Serhan entitled Conda 4.7 is 2.5 times faster than 4.6. Here's how he did it. I highly recommend the read there. So
wow.
Yeah,
that's a big speed up.
It's pretty fast. So that all being said, thanks for the tweets, everybody. Let's move on into our project introduction. So Condaforge, if you're not already aware, is a community-led collection of recipes, build infrastructure, and distributions. Condaforge currently builds Conda packages for Linux, Mac, Windows, ARM, Power 8 architectures. The organization on GitHub has a little over 1,400 members right now, and currently over 7,000 repos, which breaks GitHub in many ways sometimes. Right now, the Condaforge channel gets about 80 million downloads per month and growing, and I think we have a couple of notebooks to share about that, if you want to bring those up, John. And then Marius, I think, put them together, so he'll walk us through those. And one of the other important and interesting bits to talk about is that Condaforge is a NumFocus, official NumFocus project as well. So if that's important or meaningful to you. So Marius, take it away on sort of some of our download statistics here.
John, can you scroll down a little bit? So we did some basic analysis on some of the general statistics of the number of packages. So if you can scroll down, so we currently have about 200,000 artifacts that we've built. So that's an artifact there being a package version for a given architecture. And we've been building these for a couple of years now, and we've got some sort of, and the growth rate of these has been pretty impressive. So if you can scroll down to the charts. So that's sort of we're at about 7,000 packages now, and it looks like, we've been growing by, several hundred, by several thousand, sort of almost every couple of months. And sort of whilst the growth is sort of slowing down a little bit on the number of packages, it's still extremely healthy, and we're excited to just get more and more packages into our ecosystem. And there's an interesting split, I think, further down in terms of, and then these are the sort of different architectures we built for. There's a sort of slow little bit at the bottom here for our newer architectures, which is ARM and Power. And if anybody's interested in sort of helping out and contributing to that, feel free to reach out to us on Gitter. We've got most of the sort of core stack of that already built out, including things like SciPy and scikit-learn, and they both can be installed into sort of ARM architectures now. But we don't have the full set of like the masses of packages that exist on like full Condaforge for that yet.
We should reach out to the open hardware community on that one, because they'd probably be really interested in that. Cool. So, Marius, are there other alternative projects to Condaforge out there?
So we sit in a space that's sort of relatively similar to a lot of existing package managers, but we're interesting in that we're cross-platform, right? So there's lots of other systems that do something similar-ish to us. They tend to have a slightly less scientific slant than we do. But so something like Debian is probably a reasonable comparable thing to Condaforge, just because they have packages for everything. So Debian and Brew and these other systems that people usually use as their system package manager. The advantage of Condaforge being that you don't need to have root to install packages, and you can and it works on all of your machines regardless. So
yeah, that's a great point to point out, the fact that the root access is not needed. Very cool. Anthony, why was the project started, and what needs?
Yeah, so the project started back at SciPy 2015, actually. A few of us got together, including Phil Elson, Felipe, and myself, and there were some others in the room at the time, where we were trying to figure out how to do a community, quote unquote, community channel for Conda at the time. And there wasn't really sort of, there wasn't an option out there. And, a couple of us went in, and I had a couple of big questions, which Phil had basically figured out the answers to already. So one of which was, how do you build on all three major platforms, right? Namely Windows, Mac, and Linux at the time. And then how are you going to organize and manage all of these different recipes that you'll be creating? And Phil at the time knew about this like sort of secret way to build on Mac on Travis. And we enabled that and just like started abusing it, which was amazing. And so that's how we got our Mac packages up and running right from the get-go. And that's how we were able to deliver a lot of value early on. So that's kind of the need that it fills. Was we want a community packaging effort so that we all don't have to build the entire stack ourselves and go out and do all of that hard work. And we wanted to pool resources and knowledge, because there's a huge amount of information and knowledge in terms of how to build all of these lower level things that just doesn't need to be duplicated. And so that's really the need that it fills.
And a lot of those low level things are super hard to build.
Yeah.
The stuff with C in it and other things. It made everyone's life in the science and data science community a lot simpler. So thank you for that. So John, what technology is Condaforge built upon?
The thing about managing a large scale packaging platform is there are no limits, really. Anything that you can create a package for and install, it works, right? And using GitHub as our platform, we can connect basically any service provider that we want. So there weren't really many limitations. We tried everything under the sun, basically. All the common CI platforms. We make heavy use of Azure today. We use the Python requests library, PyGitHub, GitPython, various other libraries to kind of manage different things. And we've built our own tool, Conda Smithy, that kind of puts all this together in one place so that a user can access it or a maintainer can access it, so do the same work.
That's fantastic. And it is quite an elaborate tool chain. And, I've used it to release packages, and it's pretty cool how much it does for you. So that's great. So Marius, who maintains Condaforge?
So that's actually a somewhat complicated question. So Condaforge is pretty big. Condaforge is pretty big. So we've got 7,000 repositories, and so each of those repositories is maintained by their sort of submitters or people that have elected to help out on them. So those are sort of individually maintained, and users have permissions and rights to do stuff on those. And then there's a core contributors community of people who maintain like the ecosystem stack. So these are people who maintain things like Conda Smithy and work on sort of tools like stage recipes and our bot infrastructure that you may have interacted with on Condaforge, that sort of takes care of a lot of the sort of like the grunt work and busy work that people don't really want to work with that much. It's like, if I can just tell the robot to go do my work for me, I'm super happy.
That's true. I mean, I know we use bots pretty extensively with both Python, thanks to Mariata, and even like Joss, the Journal for Open Source Software, and Jose uses it for the editors and reviewers. So Anthony, why do you think bots made this process so much more efficient?
So we actually have a couple of different types of bots in our ecosystem. And so one is what we might call the web services or linter bot. Basically, it goes through and makes sure that the recipes that people produce or that they update or that they put a pull request into in the feedstock, it makes sure those adhere to the common standards that we've developed around what a good Conda recipe should actually look like. And so automating that takes a huge burden of like maintenance and review off of people, because you can just, if the linter pass, then it works. And so that's a little Heroku bot that we have running, and it can do a bunch of other fun things too, but that's sort of its main purpose is to like lint the recipes and then go and re-render them, which is basically update them to the latest state for CI. We also have this other class of bots, which is called the auto-tick bot. And the auto-tick bot was really kind of the brainchild of CJ Wright, who is deep in his PhD right now. But he really didn't want to have to keep manually updating versions on a recipe. He wanted someone to come in. He wanted a bot to come in, and whenever a new package got released to PyPI or to GitHub's release infrastructure, or if it appeared on libraries.io or wherever, he wanted the bot to go and take that, update the version number, update the hash for the tarball, and then issue a PR that updated everything. And so you didn't have to do that manually. Like if a new version of a package came out, PR would appear on that package's feedstock. And that works surprisingly well. And it runs once an hour, and it usually gets your package within the hour that it was released. If not, then it's always within the second hour pretty much. And we've come as a community to really rely on that bot, probably like to a staggering degree, right? Like if that bot goes down, people notice it instantly and start complaining on our Gitter, and that's really like kind of a lovely place to be. So,
yeah. Now, speaking of Gitter, Condaforge, I've always found, has been made up of really nice contributors and people willing to help. So, John, if I wanted to get started with Condaforge, how would I do that?
Yeah, so the first thing that I'd say is check out our webpage. From here, we have this contributing link, and you can just hop down and it shows you.
And Brandon will post all those links in the show notes
There.
and in the chat. So the wizard is behind us. Oh, there it is.
Now you can see. So if you want to report an issue with a
That's awesome.
package, we have a little template here. So this explains how you can report an issue just by raising it on the right feedstock or submitting a PR with an actual fix test. If you want to update a package, we explain down here, you fork it, you can make a PR, submit it, get it reviewed. If you have your own recipes that you want to add, you can go over to Condaforge stage recipes, which is very active, 465 PRs here.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you'd mentioned, there's also the Condaforge Gitter chat here. Make it a little bigger. So
I'm always surprised how quickly things get responded to when I put stuff into Condaforge. So congrats to that.
Yeah, there's a small army of people, right? So
yeah, and the Gitter,
They scale well.
yeah, and the Gitter chat is a great way to get feedback. So if you're like wondering where even to start, if none of that actually helps, you can just ask here. People are very friendly.
Yeah, and we've done a fair amount.
So if I was completely lost.
Yeah. And we've made a
Sorry, go ahead.
We've made a pretty substantial effort earlier this year to sort of to rework a lot of our documentation so that it's sort of much more easily structured for different classes of users. It's like do you just want to consume packages? Do you want to write one, or or have you deeply drank from the fountain of Condaforge and you want to work on it?
That's great. Now, you mentioned documentation. Are you still? Oh, you still want to go through that? Okay, cool. I actually, my view is documentation is one of the best ways to welcome people into a project and to make a project more inclusive. So, Marius, what is Condaforge doing? Are they participating in any diversity and inclusion events or efforts?
So we haven't made any formal efforts to do so as of yet, but we've established a fairly large sort of community base, and our core membership is fairly diverse already, which is
That's great.
Which is a very good sign. I think a large part of it helps that it is big. So it's by its nature, it's like at some point, if you have 20 people working as part of core, you're in a much better situation to have sort of some degree of diverse membership than if you're a project of 2 or 3 people.
I could debate that, but I think it's wonderful that you are a diverse group.
And I mean, we strive to be very, very open and welcoming on Gitter and our various sort of communication mechanisms. And we've established a fairly decent code of conduct for resolving disputes whenever they would happen. So that if bad things happen, which they do, we can have a handle on it and sort of prevent things from going out of line.
Yeah, no, I commend you for the efforts that you have done, because as far as I can remember, it's been welcoming and open and really trying to make people more productive. So thank you for keeping and doing that. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over briefly to Anthony as we look at the demos and walkthroughs for Conda.
Yeah, that's right. So we have a little demo that we're going to do, and hopefully I'm going to share my screen here, and then Marius and John can explain what I'm doing while I'm doing it. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to put in, or we're going to make a recipe here right now for you live on screen. So Marius, John, you want to jump in and describe what I'm doing? So
yeah. So Anthony's found a nice project on PyPI. It's called SacPrinter, and he thinks it's great, but he really wants to be able to install it with Condaforge. So how's he going to go about it? So he's going to take a look at the thing. SacPrinter, it's like he's going to go to the download files page and grab some URLs from there. He already has a fork copy of stage recipes, which is our standard entry point for where you make recipes. So there's an example recipe in there that builds like a relatively simple sort of JSON library, and he's going to copy that example recipe and then change almost all the lines of it.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
There's lots of comments in that recipe itself for like how recipes are structured. And if you have a more complicated thing that you need to work on, it's generally a good idea to go take a look at sort of a project that is sort of similar to yours. So if you have a thing that has big, scary amounts of C dependencies, go find another library that's already on Condaforge with a big, scary amount of C dependencies and just see how those are built. Most of those are structured reasonably well, and it'll sort of give you an idea of what these things will generally look like. Cool. So this is the Condaforge. This is standard Conda recipe. We use a little bit of ginger tags at the top just to make some of the things sort of simpler. Just going to rename those things. Cool. We do verify that the SHAs that you're using are sort of used to ensure that packages are sort of at least like somewhat expected in their content. These are required, so our linter bot will complain if you don't have these in. And if it's like we've made the linter sort of take care of a lot of this sort of boilerplate, like complaining against you. And Anthony's made this a no-arch Python recipe. So this is actually a package that works on all versions of Python. So we don't need to build sort of different versions for different platforms, which saves quite a lot on CI time and makes it a lot simpler to manage a lot of these simple Python recipes.
Now we need to know what it actually. We have a test section, so we need to figure out what it actually imports, right? Usage.
So generally, you can look through the example of a library, and I guess it is called SacPrinter. So we can just put in SacPrinter there, and it'll import SacPrinter. Generally, for a lot of Python libraries, we tend to not run the full test suite of a library. For more complicated cases, we do that in certain cases, but generally, we assume that libraries have their own test suites that pass before they put them on PyPI. We don't want to be responsible for running your tests as well. We have a fair amount of CI capacity, but not infinite.
Right. So you're just checking if
you can import it, so which generally just means like, did you specify all the dependencies of your package correctly?
Perfect.
Yeah, for compiled code, we might do more testing, like running make test or something like this.
Yeah.
Or make check.
Yeah. So
good to know.
Cool. And so this, so we also have a section where you need to put in the license information. Lots of licenses tend to actually require that you ship them along with your software. Not all package ecosystems do this. So in this case, this recipe does not ship the source repo does not ship its license. So we're just going to sort of include this alongside of our package. Cool.
And yep, it's there.
It's there. Cool. Okay, let's go back to the recipe. And Anthony, you need to fix the Python requirement. This is a no-arch recipe, so you can't have selectors.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so this is an important thing that catches some people.
This is an important thing that does catch some people out, so that should actually be Python greater than equal to 3.4.
Okay.
3.4.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
So
it's not the
3.4 is like
selector,
the
it's
version.
the
Yeah.
constraint.
yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be a couple of years before Python 34 is out.
Yeah, that's true. And I forgot to do the right thing, which is check out a branch. Yeah.
Right.
You can do that now. Git is very forgiving with this.
Yeah. Okay, and then
you need to add yourself as a maintainer at the extra section at the bottom.
I think I did that, but let's just make sure. Yep.
Okay. Just make sure.
And
yeah, and we've got a little extra recipe maintainer. So if your GitHub username is added to that recipe maintainer section, you will have commit rights on the resulting feedstock repo that gets created.
And we can just copy this link and go ahead and open the PR against staged recipes and go through.
So at this point, we've edited the YAML file, right? And we've committed it on a branch in GitHub and pushed it up to GitHub. And now we're in the stage recipes
Yep,
PR.
that's right.
Right?
Anthony's going through the template here. We have a nice little GitHub template for all recipes that are submitted, and it just checks kind of basic things. Is the license included? Do you have maintainers? Is the build number set to 0? These sorts of things.
It's really helpful with all the details to have that checklist.
And then in very short order, the web services bot will come around and lint. So
there we go. It's made. And as this recipe is created, you'll see there's a whole bunch of CI that started kicking off on this as well.
Right. And here's the linter that just commented that the recipe is in excellent condition, which is exactly what we wanted to see. It'll print a little error message if it's not. So, yeah.
Right. It's a pretty helpful error message too,
Yeah.
if I recall correctly.
Yeah. You don't want to look at the code that does that, but yeah, it's helpful. And since this is no Arch Python or any no Arch, it just needs to succeed on Linux 64. Now we don't need to necessarily watch this get built and merged, but I will say
it'll take about 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah, it'll take 4 or 5 minutes, so we're not going to wait around for that. But I will say a key thing that new people miss is when the recipe is green and done, you want to ping the Condaforge staged recipes organization, or sorry, team. And this lets people know that this is ready for review. So you can say like ready. Or this is how you get help too.
Yeah.
So. And
it's a large group of people who's submitted several recipes and been very helpful even before being added to this team. So they're a great resource.
Yeah.
So would the stage recipes team be a good place for people to, once they've done a few packages, to start contributing?
Yes, that is a very good place for them to start contributing.
Yeah, no, we need more hands on stage recipes for sure. Yeah. That stage recipes is what allows us to scale to ever more packages. So if you're a reviewer on stage recipes, that's a pretty low bar to get access to, and we're happy to give those commit bits to more people. So yeah.
Brandon, let's make sure we get in the wizard show notes.
Oh, and you can see it's running the build here. Like we said, we're not going to watch this whole thing, so can probably move on at this point, I think.
So I think now we're getting ready to go into probably my favorite part, is the roadmap and where this project's going, which is, what you might need help with or what they might need funding with down the road. So I am going to let Anthony sort of guide this discussion, and I will jump in.
Sure. So yeah, we have a ton of things that we want to do, right? And so what what are some of your favorites? I guess we can just start with you, John, and then if you want to list what your favorite one is, and we can dive into that, and then Marius, if you want to go for yours. And
Sure.
there's so much here, so yeah.
So personally, I'm really excited about the new architectures we're adding and doing some work on GPU packaging. So I've been pushing on this a lot recently. I added some new Docker images that will build with the CUDA compilers, so as NVCC included. And I've done a little work with that.
Nice.
Built the nickel package locally, which worked nicely for me. And colleagues have been using that with other things. Have been doing some other GPU packaging work as well. So looking forward to integrating that into Condaforge.
Yeah.
Maybe Mario can take up power and ARM.
Yeah. So
well, before we dive into that, in the power and ARM stuff, like what are the challenges there, John, and what are the and how can other people come in and help, and what sort of needs to happen? Like, could we can go into a lot more detail here. So in all of these points. So.
Yeah, those are good questions. So I think the first thing is like having the right amount of logic to sort of stitch things together. So we use different Docker images for each version of CUDA. Mm-hmm. So you'll have like one for like CUDA 9.2 and one for CUDA 10 and one for 10.1. So then you need to do a little bit of work to say like, oh, okay, if a package says it needs to build with NVCC, I need to link it against these different images. And then when that happens, I need to make sure I have a run export with the right CUDA toolkit along with it. So there's a little bit of this like stitching together logic. There's a little bit of like infrastructure work that will need to happen to make this work.
Yeah, and then the idea is that that like our tool Conda Smithy is going to do most of that work for you. It's like as far as like the amount of things that users would need to actually do to get these things to happen, that should be basically just be saying in your recipe, I need NVCC, right?
Right.
And that should be all that you need to do. Now, obviously, it's like the fact you're still going to need to make sure that your thing does actually build correctly with NVCC, and we've got some work ongoing on how we're actually going to go about testing some of these things because it's a little bit more complicated. It's one thing to just build packages with NVCC, but in order to test them, you do actually have to run them on real hardware. So we're working through the mechanisms of how to actually get that going.
Right. Yeah. So the challenge, just to make that clear, right? One of the challenges there is Conda build supports building on one architecture for a completely different architecture. But then we also require this test phase, which actually requires the real architecture. So if that's different than what you built on, you're kind of in a bind sometimes. So if you need big GPUs to test,
then you need big GPUs to test.
Yeah.
We currently don't really have piles of big GPUs.
Right.
Well, I know Matthias dropped in the chat that they tried it out on some of the GPUs in their HPC environment and got a 30x speed up. So it's maybe worth finding
it's worth doing, I think. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. Like, I mean, turns out GPUs are fast, is I think the general conventional wisdom.
Absolutely.
So Marius, do you want to talk a bit about power and ARM?
Yeah, so we've been building out some initial sort of sets of packages for PowerPC and ARM architectures. PowerPC because there's a couple of fairly big supercomputers that run that as an architecture, and it's kind of nice being able to have those things available on these big HPC setups. And ARM because like ARM chips are becoming pretty cheap and they don't use a lot of power. And we started seeing that there's a general move to having to wanting to be able to run some fairly sophisticated scientific applications on a lot of these small little like tiny ARM chips. So you can get these great ARM chips for like $9 or $10, and you can run OpenCV on them or scikit-image, like wire up a camera, have it do something. That's pretty cool. So we're initially actually targeting sort of specifically being able to build Condaforge up to something like OpenCV and scikit-image, and getting that sort of side of the stack working, and then we'll gradually expand outwards as new use cases are brought up. So if you have a specific use case that you would like ARM and Power9 packages for, talk to us in Getter. We'll get it added to the migration, and it'll start building out that package. And that sort of leads me into the next thing that I'm very excited about is automation of our migration systems. So if you've been a member of Condaforge for a while, you may have lived through the great compiler migration, which is the thing we did last year.
John's laughing down there.
It was rough. I'm not going to lie. We basically rebuilt every single package on Condaforge and switched the compiler that it was, and a lot of them required us to change recipes. So this was a Herculean effort by many people.
It was about 6,000 packages. Let's be
about 6,000 packages, probably, and let's say 1,000 of them needed changes. Right? That's an enormous amount of work, but it got done. And the ecosystem is now in a very, very good place. And as part of that, we built a lot of tooling to sort of automate these migrations. And we're continuing that tooling and making it better. And we're going to start using a lot of these things to facilitate the next phase of these. So we anticipate that we will never do another giant big bang upgrade like we did for the compiler migration stuff, but we'll do them much more frequently in a more targeted fashion. So it's like if a new version of Boost comes along, we'll just rebuild everything that touches Boost, and we can do that pretty much automatically without human involvement at this point, which is kind of great. So we've built a lot of this automation, and at some point in the future, we'll probably have a mechanism that a package maintainer can opt into having, say, like a package run on auto mode. So something where it's like if the bot makes a PR's green, everything's good, then the bot just merges the PR.
And what's really cool about this migration infrastructure that Marius is talking about is it can have multiple migrations at the same time. So it's not let's rebuild for Boost and HDF5 later. We can do both of those at the same time.
Yeah, so we can have multiple concurrent migrations happening, and they all follow the correct structure of how packages depend on each other. So you won't just get suddenly everything gets asked to be built for a new version of Boost. It's like most packages, particularly on the C side of things, have these sort of relatively long dependency chains, and you have to build them in order. So there's a lot of this sort of bookkeeping and keeping track of like the graph topology of how packages are associated with each other, and we can do this in sequence now correctly. And there's a lot of tracking that goes on. There's some relatively impressive. GitHub can store state. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but if you do it well, it can store state really, really, really well.
Yeah, so nice. I think for one of my favorite things that we've been talking about doing for a while, but haven't made a lot of progress on, probably because we need a lot of help in this space, is building out the WebAssembly stack and WebAssembly as an architecture. So that's just a huge shout out for anyone who wants to help with that. There's hurdles there. They're not insurmountable. But we can go ahead and do it, and Conda Forge can build out the whole stack for WebAssembly. Another thing that we've also sort of in the similar vein.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah, go ahead. Go right ahead.
So I don't know if many people know this, but we rebuilt Clang. We have like a Clang compiler ourselves in Condaforge, so it supports WebAssembly. So you can actually build things with that Clang compiler and get WebAssembly binaries from it.
Right.
So.
We have a lot of we have a lot of the base stuff there. We just need to be able to like have an architecture, and have Conda build, produce an artifact for that thing, and we need a compiler hook and all that other stuff. So But
There's
yeah,
sci-fi sprints
we'll get to
coming
that.
up.
There are sci-fi sprints coming up.
The other thing that I find kind of exciting, and maybe this is a little more, I don't know, like controversial in some sense, but I think it would be really neat for Condaforge to be a build tool for other things as well. So if we wanted to, because we have all this infrastructure, if we wanted to build Python wheels, or we wanted to build, packages like binary packages for other systems, like that, we have enough. Traditionally we haven't had enough infrastructure or CI time to do that. But with Azure coming online and really giving us enough resources to do sort of whatever, I think we could branch out if folks are interested in helping out, either in funding or in time with doing things in that direction. So for example, like you really wanted Debian packages built on Condaforge, like that's something we could do, or Ubuntu packages or wheels or whatever. So and we're very open to those ideas. So
Has there been any discussion with the Julia folks?
There's been some discussion, I think. John, you might know more. Marius, you might know more.
There's been a little bit, but not that much as far as I know.
Yeah,
We've built the Julia interpreter, and then I think there might be one or two packages that exist. Yeah, that would be a very cool infrastructure to build out, I think.
Yeah, that would be great.
Packages.
Yeah. Probably be a win-win for many people on that.
Yeah, we should
probably
reach out to them.
Yeah, and then just sort of like
in
a similar vein to Julia, we've had some interest in potentially building out like a subset of like the Python libraries for PyPy, because right now if you install anything from PyPy that requires numeric stuff, you have to rebuild it from source, right? And this can take a long time.
Right. That would be a nice enhancement
and then
as
sort
well.
of like basically having PyPy essentially as a version of Python, kind of sort of on that kind of thing. So that's the things we're sort of thinking of, is like you can install, like I want to install Python, but my version of Python is PyPy, right? Instead of like standard C Python, and that's kind of the idea that we're thinking of there. It'll be a little tricky getting some of the stuff working, because like Conda does make a fair amount of assumptions about Python in particular. Doesn't make a lot of assumptions about anything else, but there are some sort of Python in particular things that are there that it's like PyPy behaves differently. So things are a little different there, but I think we can get those problems sorted out. But it's mostly like these are all projects that they require a champion.
Yeah,
right.
And we're happy to welcome anyone into who's willing to be that champion. We're happy to welcome them into our community and onto core, and whatever they need to get that pushed through. Like if you come to us and really want to do that and put in the time, we're happy to help.
Great.
John, did you have any other things on the roadmap you wanted to list off here?
Well, Python 3.8 is coming around the corner, so we're going to need to build this out.
Pretty soon.
We have like RC packages and like a few things built for Python 3.8. So it'd be helpful if people try things out and see what works and what doesn't, provide feedback. There's a lot of really exciting changes in Python 3.8, so I'm really excited to start using it and just replacing Python 3.7 immediately once that's released.
Always operated for life.
Yeah.
Marius, anything in addition you want to?
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of interesting things that we've been also working very closely in collaboration with Anaconda, and there's a lot of like really interesting things that we've built and sort of prototyped on our side, making working with Conda a lot faster. There's some interesting things that are coming up with. So we're thinking through, it's like epoch releases. So you can say something like, I want Condaforge packages, but I don't really want anything newer than April of 2017, right? generally, you wouldn't want to use that, but that's useful for sort of scientific reproducibility of results. So you can sort of pin to a particular epoch, and that kind of like cuts off your package ecosystem after some point in time.
Yeah. So the big benefit here for end users would be you could set up to say, like, I don't want anything older than 6 months or whatever, for example. And then that would cut your graph down to a much smaller size so that you don't have, your solve space isn't as big and the installs go faster. And that's very useful, we found. Because you don't need.
Nice. Well, it looks like,
go ahead.
Not to
No, go ahead.
finish.
That's fine.
Oh, I was going to say, there's a lot of questions that are coming in, and in the interest of time, maybe we can kind of weave those questions with the future discussion and get some of the audience things addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
So, Anthony, I think there's a question for
from
you.
Piaru, given the growth rate of Conda packages, have you estimated when Condaforge will quote unquote fill up, in the sense of when managing of packages and their dependencies becomes too expensive, CPU or storage or network bandwidth or manpower wise? So maybe I'll do these in reverse order. So I think in terms of contributors or maintainers, those are going to scale with the packages, right? And they sort of have to. So that's up to individuals to self-regulate. Now, whether people are good at that or not is a whole separate discussion. In terms of bandwidth and storage, that's another tricky thing. I mean, so some of our members who are actually at Anaconda and work on Anaconda, the anaconda.org site and work on maintaining the channels, that's kind of their problem internally right now. I think there's there's sort of this, you're touching on a larger existential problem of like, when does the packaging become too, or when does the size of the ecosystem become too large for one organization? And I think that's basically up to Anaconda to figure out for themselves. So, and as Condaforge, we don't make any claims or statements about that. So, yeah.
And in terms of like CI capacity, in that same manner, sort of being able to actually build, we have hit this problem in the past, where we've basically just run out of CI because CI was just busy at all times, and it would take you would make a PR and it would take a day or two for your PR to get built, which is terrible. We had some good discussions with Azure. So we basically moved essentially everything over to Azure pipelines now, and we've been working with them, and they've given us and we talk with them fairly regularly, and we have a large amount of build capacity on their side, and we haven't encountered any issues whatsoever since switching to them in terms of like not being able, like, delays at getting stuff building.
Interesting.
Been really good about
Excellent.
fielding.
So now we've got. Oh, go ahead,
They've
Don.
been really good
No, go
about
ahead.
like fielding different issues that come up, which is great. Like even within hours of sending an email. So from the GitHub perspective, that's
awesome.
They're receptive when you can talk to them. They're pretty fantastic.
Okay, so now that our commercial for Azure Pipelines is done, now actually, I have to say, Azure Pipelines is pretty fast, and it has been very responsive, and they've made a proactive effort to reach out to the scientific community. So that's been nice too. But I'm going to move us on to a next question, and this one comes from Howard Butler, and the question is: are there any significant infrastructure roadmap items for Condaforge in the next 6 months?
I mean, it's kind of, if there's a champion, I mean, that's what it is. Yeah, I think that if you want an infrastructure problem solved, jump in and be a champion. I think the biggest one that Marius is working on right now is this migrations infrastructure. We'd like to deprecate AppVeyor, but there's some issues there that we aren't going to get involved in right now. But if you're interested, you'll talk to me later. And then the GPU stuff. I think those are the big ones that we see on our horizon. But if there's other things, like, jump on board. So
Sounds good.
So for the next question, Matthias asks, SciPy 2019 is in about 2 weeks. You will be there, if I'm not mistaken. Is there a good time and place during SciPy to reach out to you or any of you in person to get started and involved in Condaforge or just learn more?
We're going to be there. There's a number of us that will be there. I think we're like 5 or 6, something like that.
Yeah, I believe there's a BOF. So
yeah, there is a BOF. We're going to be presenting at the plenary session as well. And there's a number of us that will be there for sprints. So we'll be around, and we'll probably be wearing Condaforge badges on our, like, so that you can at least spot us. But it's like, reach out to us, say hi. I don't think we have mugs this year.
Yeah,
That's okay, as long as you have packages.
it's an open container.
Okay. Here's a question from Eric Dill. Why are there so many open PRs into staged recipes? Will it take a long time to get my new recipe merged?
The answer there is it depends. So in general, one of the best ways to get your recipe merged is actually pinging the staged recipes maintainers, so that people know that stuff is happening and something's ready, because there's a fair amount of recipes that are hard, right? So they're going to take 10, 50, 100 commits before they're actually green. They tend, so some things can just take a long time before they're actually sort of capable of being merged. In general, I'd say it's like things are probably merged within, like, I'd say a week or two. Is I think what I would say is our general sort of median time at the moment for things that do get merged. There are some recipes in currently staged recipes does need a little bit of cleanup in terms of like getting rid of like really old stuff that's never going to get merged. And also it's like there are cases where you just have contributor fall off, which happens, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and most of the open PRs into staged recipes are there because they're broken, and we just haven't gone and cleaned them out. So with that, we'll answer the one last question really quickly by Chris. Are there plans for Python 2.7 deprecation? John, go.
Yes.
That was a very tentative yes.
It's a pretty solid yes, I think. Yeah.
Oh, good.
We thought through this.
Yeah. Well, end of life will drop 2.7 is the answer. But now it is time for our world famous rant section, where we each get 15 seconds to rant about whatever topic we want. John, it is your soapbox.
All right. Well, Gitter needs threads. I feel very strongly about this. So they made a commit related to that like a day ago. So maybe it'll happen.
Awesome.
We can hope
Marius,
so, right?
You're up.
So Gitter was amazing, but it really, really, really sucks if you're following 7,000 repositories, because you now get thousands of emails a day, and the Gitter notifications UI is just garbage, and it doesn't work.
And with that, another thing that doesn't work so well is airport gate boarding lines. And you'd think after all the research that's been done on queuing, it would get better over the years. I'm kind of finding the opposite, but that's my rant for today.
For my rant, piggybacking onto Marius's rant, I can't say enough amazing things about Octobox at octobox.io. Octobox is an inbox for GitHub notifications, and it has basically saved my life after Google Inbox died. Andrew Nesbitt has done a superlative job with this tool, and you should all use it. That's all the time that we have. That's all the time that we have for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. You can find us on Twitter at Quansight AI. If you're interested in funding open source projects, including Condaforge, you can find all of the project roadmaps at quansight.com/projects. John, where can people find you? Or where can people find you in Condaforge, John and Marius?
Well, we'll be at SciPy, as we mentioned. So come meet us there. If you can't make sprints or birds of the feather, just grab us. We're friendly. We'll talk.
Yeah.
All right.
And alternatively, reach out to us on our Gitter channel. There's always somebody around. And we're looking forward to interacting with you and like sort of helping you solve your packaging problems.
And if you enjoyed the type of script in this episode, I hope you'll all react well to the news that next time we'll be discussing Interact. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.